Hello and welcome to the Plant Paradigm Podcast, where we have inspiring conversations with amazing individuals from all around the world and look for ways to create a clean, green and sustainable future for us, the planet and all beings. I'm your host, Tom Simak, a fellow plant eater who strives to optimize every living ecosystem. Passionate about looking after this beautiful floating rock we call home and all the lovely creatures that dwell among it. Just before we get into today's episode, I just want a quick shout out and a hi to those on YouTube. I see you there watching the videos, and I also see you there not clicking the subscribe button. So definitely make sure you click that one. And while you're there, for anyone listening to this that isn't subscribed or following the podcast across all the different channels, make sure to do that one. It just takes one tick and it helps us out so much. Moving on. Today's conversation is with Kate Galli. Kate is a vegan health coach, animal rights activist, and creator of StrongBodyGreenPlanet.com. Kate is a fellow podcaster who runs the Healthification pod, where she has over 700 episodes. I know, heaps, right? And she's interviewed prominent figures like Dr. Gregor, Bulsiewicz, Neal Barnard, etc. Kate is also qualified as a master personal trainer, life coach, NLP practitioner, and has completed the eCornell plant-based nutrition certificate program. We're going to get into so much today. First half is going to stick a lot to activism and having those powerful, impactful conversations with people around you, including the dreaded family members who come at you. That is always a great conversation I love to have. We're going to talk about different techniques and ways to approach people in talking about not only the plant nutrition side of things, but specifically the animal rights side of things, and really sympathizing and coming down to their level. We're also going to talk a lot about habits and being the healthiest version of yourself, and that means setting non-negotiables. It's something we don't talk about a lot, but we definitely took advantage of the fact that Kate interviewed the author of best-selling book, Atomic Habits, James Clear. So we talk a lot about setting different habits and the way to get balance in your life. And then, of course, we have to touch on food, eating the rainbow, all the different things, and even Kate's favorite meal. I really hope you enjoy the conversation between Kate and I, and I'll see you on the other side. Kate Galli, welcome to the Plant Paradigm Podcast. How are you going?
Tom, it's such a huge pleasure to be here. I'm awesome. Thank you.
Awesome. Absolute honor. Look, the other week when we were chatting via email, you actually said you were heading to the Cuba Truth to do some activism. Is that something you do pretty often?
I love it. I do. I was going every single week for a while there for most of this year before Sydney went into lockdown. And it's not that anonymous for the voiceless anymore, but we have an amazing activist scene here in Sydney, and we have Cube of Truths multiple times every single week. And do you know, honestly, I actually go there mostly to hang out with the other vegans. I get to talk to non-vegans all day, every day, apart from podcasting. And I just love going and seeing the other activists. And obviously, hopefully, I'll have a few amazing conversations with non-vegans as well.
Are you, like with these ones where they're showing the screen and they're talking to people, are you usually the one behind the screen, or are you out there like conversing with other people?
Do you know, we all have to do our bit, but I much prefer to be having a conversation. I much prefer to not be behind the screen unless like I've had a huge week and, you know, I just feel like a little bit of time out. And one of the things like that I've found when you do get to hold the screen is it actually gives you so much compassion for, of course, the other activists. You can see them doing their things, but you can also see all the people that look and get shocked and are affected by the footage, and they might not stop and have a conversation with an activist, but you do know that a seed has been planted. So either way, it's pretty good.
I love that. Like, what have you had some conversations that are really like stand out-ish? Like, have you had conversations where maybe someone might have cried or had like this glass shattering moment right in front of your eyes?
Do you know, like the emotional and the crying and the wanting to change, they're fairly common. It's more the really, really hostile people that come around. I'm thinking of two in in particular. One was in Bondi Junction, and he came out with me with just such hostility. He wasn't a farmer or anything like that. He just had obviously had a bad experience with vegans, and he was super hostile. And my go is always to meet them with a calm and compassionate and loving energy. And it is amazing how quickly that will turn someone around. If you genuinely want to understand where they're coming from, which is what I did with this gentleman. And we had a chat for maybe half an hour or so. And at the end of it, he wanted to hug me. It was pre-COVID, so that was cool. And he said it was the best conversation he's ever had with a vegan. And, he didn't say he was going to go vegan overnight, but that was a huge seed planted. And it was a really big learning for me in my early Cube of Truth days that never give up on someone, and never be frightened if someone seems really hostile. They will generally meet the energy that you bring to the conversation.
That's really awesome. I could imagine, you know what? I can't even imagine what it would be like, especially as a female, to have this guy, regardless of stature, come at you like a raging bull. I want to know, in this particular situation, how exactly did you diffuse that?
It was literally the way I was looking at him and interacting with him, and I wasn't being defensive or trying to throw the vegan arguments with him. I was genuinely, and they can tell if it's genuine or if it's a line, I was genuinely wanting to know why he was so upset and where he was coming from and what his stance was. And I've seen this multiple times, even with drunk groups of young men who come out hostile of it as anything. And us females won't usually approach those big groups of drunken men, but I've seen male activists just go up and literally hug them, or, put an arm, and again, wouldn't happen right now, but just in a really friendly, how you going, mate, gentle, compassionate energy, approach these guys. And I've never seen it escalate. It's always gone down from there. It's so impressive to see.
That's really awesome. What questions have you learned to ask when talking to people, not only just diffusing the situation, but then guiding the conversation to kind of foster these seeds and questions to let them come to their own conclusions?
Do you know the really easy thing with Cube of Truth, which is so different to any other form of activism and definitely so different to conversations with my personal training clients, is the fact that the footage is there doing the work for you. So basically you see them looking and they're in absolute horror, and you can ask them as simple as, do you think this is okay? Or you can point out something as simple as, this is standard practice every day here in Australia. These are the individuals behind our food choices. We're showing this footage not to make anyone feel guilty. We just want you to know what's being hidden from you. And so it's not really confrontational or judgmental, but it's letting those horrific images, and they're so brutal, they're so heartbreaking. They do the work for you. And sometimes you've just got to kind of get out of the way enough to let the person see and to get an idea of what might be important to them.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember when I did the first Cube of Truth when Anonymous for Voiceless first started in Melbourne, and a question that I felt worked really well, or a statement similar to what you were kind of talking about, was just, have you seen this before? And I feel like a lot of people, and I haven't done that sort of activism for a while, but a lot of people would have seen it around Facebook and Instagram, and maybe even with the surge of the amount of activists that are actually now on TikTok really blowing up and showing a lot of this footage. In your experience, because how long have you been vegan now?
Been vegan 5.5 years, but I was veggie for ethical reasons 23 years prior to that. So,
Wow.
if I'd known what I know now, I would have been vegan 28.5 years ago. I just didn't know.
Oh, of course. Every vegan would say that. It's like that whole
Yeah,
saying of the only thing I regret is not doing it sooner, that whole concept.
100%. Yeah.
What do you think is the most effective or impactful form of activism?
I don't think there's one most effective. I think we need all types of activists and all types of activism to appeal to all types of non-vegan. So I think most effective for you is to find what you enjoy and what's sustainable, because some things, like the politicians like Emma Hurst, Australian Justice Party, most brutal job in the world. I could not do that sort of thing even if I had the talent for it. Like, no way. Same as like Meet the Victims, like Leah doing that, and even the Save movement. I couldn't witness those animals going to their death every single week. So I think you need to find what you're good at. For some people, it might be making delicious vegan food. For you and I, it's podcasting, but it's finding what you're good at, what you love, and what you can keep doing, because sadly, the world's not going vegan overnight. We wish it would, but it's not. So we have to be in it for the long haul.
Absolutely. I love that whole play to your strengths thing. Like I as well could not be doing what Emma Hurst done. Just being in the midst of political figures and having, I guess, a lot of the money doing the talking would be extremely frustrating to me. And you've got people, like random people, like Patrick Baboumian starting a comic book series. That is activism.
Amazing.
And you've got like Vegan Sidekick that blew up on Instagram, just doing little doodles of like just random, the Foursquare things. Most people would have seen them. It's just, there's so many different levels. And, for us, obviously we play to our strengths of speaking to people, whether it's another guest or for you, on the streets. How do you scope out what pillar? Because I don't talk to activists very often on the show, so I'm really going to drill down on this for the first half.
Yeah, cool.
What kind of pillars do you look at? Because obviously with veganism, we've got 3 pillars, and you have to, I'm guessing in a way, scope out what this person values in life and where they'd kind of go down. Like most veganism, obviously we're talking about ethics, but for some people it might be the health thing that really turns a stone for them. Like, how do you probe them to figure out which route you then take?
Yeah, totally. And it's different whether it's the cube of truth or, just as another example with my personal training clients, I always want to lead with the ethics and the animals. I am slowly, because I'm so stubborn, I am slowly learning that doesn't actually work for most people. For most people, it's the health angle, because most people are in it for themselves, and they want to avoid pain and suffering and health issues themselves, or maybe it's vanity and they want to lose a little bit of weight, have a little bit more energy, whatever it is. So again, if it's on the street, cube of truth, there's no pattern to it, right? You see how affected they are by the footage. And if they're affected, and if you say, have you seen this before? And they're like, no, God, it's horrific. Then you can take the animal rights aspect and lead with ethics, and that's amazing. That's my heart. But if they go, yeah, looks all right for me, love bacon, then it's going to be one of the other angles. And if they're fit, you might go down the health or athlete angle. It's really dependent on the individual.
I always said when I first started kind of being activism, my philosophy is, because I think it's very stressful when you first become vegan, it's like you're going to come across with a lot of people in your face with different levels of questions that you've never had to come through. Like if you're an average person, you don't have a master's of nutrition, doctorate in philosophy, and you've got this environmental degree, yet now you have to know a little bit of each. And, I always thought you don't have to be the expert, just use the experts. Like just say, I don't know anything about fitness, but this really strong guy seems to be all right on plants. Do you have like certain people if someone's like bacon or protein, like how do you go like, oh, actually this particular figure is actually totally fine with plants? Like, do you have certain athletes that you look to or certain stats that you bring up when people say things like that?
Do you know, that's a really good point. Like, I think when we first start, just for our own confidence, we should actually do a bit of hours and actually get a little bit more articulate and have some of the facts, but also acknowledge that we're never going to have them all. And so at least have the go-to resources. So for anything health and science and evidence-based in nutrition, of course, always Dr. Michael Greger of nutritionfacts.org. Always. And there are so many other amazing plant-based doctors to refer to. But athletes is really, really crazy easy. I mean, so many of us at Cube are pretty fit. And often the people that are bringing up the health issues, I'll be blunt, are not so fit. So you kind of, sometimes I'll just say, look, sometimes you'll just state the obvious, but then there are so many amazing vegan athletes. Obviously, there's Game Changers, which has been hugely impactful. But I'll turn to like the Niemeyer, the Tory Washington, the Hench Herbivore. There are some amazing athletes. We've got really an abundance of choice to turn to.
Do you ever I usually use the same amount of people, and I throw in Baboomium and James Wilkes and the likes of all these. Game Changers is always an easy one to throw in, easy. Like the bat. Do you have like on the other side of that, obviously using athletes and other people, do you have like simple stats that you stick to, or do you like to talk with like your own experiences in life?
Yeah, I'm probably more own experiences, or I'll talk about a client or my mum or my personal experience, just because I think that's how I personally respond to the more personal, story. Rather, too many stats and I zone out. They blow your mind, but like they're not going to stick in the person's mind. And the internet's there for stats; they can look it up themselves.
On the other side of stats, you've obviously got like someone who just wouldn't listen to anything regardless. Where is the conversation going, or at what point does the conversation get to where you throw in the towel?
Yeah, I think that really is a skill to kind of like not waste your time with someone. It's never a waste of time if they're open-minded and they just disagree. Sure. I've had amazing, they're the most fun conversations where they're coming at it and you're coming at it and you're learning from each other, and it's really intellectually stimulating. But then there are people that either just keep diverting it to something completely not relevant, and you keep bringing it back to animal rights and they're just wandering off just because they've got someone to talk to. And I'll exit from that situation pretty quickly. Or people that just come up with the same stupid excuses and they're not open-minded, and it's not a good use of your time and it's frustrating. And, I'm going to exit myself from that situation as well, because we're all volunteers. We all have things we would prefer to be doing on a Saturday afternoon than Cube, but we'll do it until it's a vegan world.
Yeah. How do you... Because with the exit strategy, does it work the same way with like close friends and family?
That's a real struggle street for me, Tom. And I know it is for so many vegans. And I take heart from the fact that vegans I have so much respect for, the rituals, that sort of thing, have not converted their family members. I also take heart from the fact that my dear mum has been vegan, plant-based, 3.5 years. She doesn't call herself vegan. She basically is 3.5 years now. And she lives with my dad, who is like the anti-vegan. He is so vehemently opposed to it and so defensive. And so one part, it gives me so much hope that mum was terrified of even trying it, of even like opening her mind just the tiniest bit to it, because she knew it would bring conflict into their relationship. And she did try it. And so that's given me heart. But my dad, I feel like I push too hard and it pushes him away. And so now I'm trying to focus on what we have in common. I'm trying to cook delicious food when I go home and not get disappointed that he then sprinkles some flesh on top of that amazing complete meal that I've provided for him. And it's a work in progress. Hey, I'm open to any solutions that anyone has on the stubborn family member with a closed mind, and for that matter, a closed heart.
Oh, for sure. I think it's very universal, and I can relate heavily. Like my mum's quite plant-based and my dad's quite anti, and it kind of goes to show. And I think we can even take veganism out of the picture here And I think it was Don Miguel Ruiz that wrote the Four Agreements, who said, if you think you're enlightened, go and spend a year with your parents. And it's that whole saying that family, they, because you've spent so much time together, they just know how to push your buttons about anything, be it veganism or anything. So I think what you said before with maybe arming yourself with some facts just to talk about things, but also getting some level of sympathy and compassion to the fact that they're just not understanding where you're coming from. And that's like probably the hardest thing about being a vegan at the moment. Like, would you agree?
Do you know what so is? And it's the fact that when someone you love is not open to even hearing the tiniest thing about this huge and probably most important aspect of your life, when they're completely closed-minded to even hearing about it, you can then jump to thinking that they don't care about you just because they don't care about the biggest part of your life. You can then make that mean they don't care about you. And it's not true. However, it does sometimes feel true. So my current strategy, I don't know if this is going to work, but my current strategy is to find the right messenger for my father, to find someone who, as you said, doesn't have that family baggage, who maybe he respects from a distance. Someone who's not like that fitness freak, idealistic, animal rights activist little daughter. I'll always be that extreme little daughter. He doesn't want to take advice from me. So I'm also trying to find the right messenger and get that into his hands.
Just we need good old Arnie to talk to all the dads of the world.
I don't know if it would be Arnie. Do you know my latest strategy? I interviewed Captain Paul Watson from the Sea Shepherd, and Dad's in the Coast Guard and he's obsessed with it. It's the only thing he talks about. And so I'm kind of thinking that maybe to hear from, a captain of a ship who does all these amazing things and is exactly Dad's age, maybe he'll at least listen to that show. We'll see.
Oh, for sure. You know who actually has a really good approach to talking to... I don't know how he learned it, but Earthling Ed.
Oh, he's amazing. He's the best.
How does he do that?
His parents aren't vegan, though.
Yeah.
So even he can't do it.
Even the accent, even the big words, like he can't do it.
It's not more facts. It's definitely not more facts. That's not the thing. And it's not being a more articulate communicator. I think it's something more than that.
When you talk to people, have you ever thought of maybe listening to, if you have Earthling Ed and that's your idealistic, and there's lots of people like Carb Strong or whoever you idealize as this amazing activist who talks to people. Have you ever thought about, all right, cool, I'm just going to listen to a bunch of his videos and copy his words?
Do you know, I listened to a bunch of his videos early days. Definitely Earthling Ed, his 30 Days, 30 Excuses. They are amazing.
Yeah,
and I would recommend them to anyone. Yeah, absolutely amazing. I think with anything, it has to be, it has to align with your heart and the way that you speak and align with your values. And obviously everything he does align with my values, but I think you need a little bit of you in it as well. I'm not a fan of exactly trying to copy one person's approach because they're always going to do it better than me anyway. They're them. I'm the one that can do me best. I just need to keep getting better at it.
Yeah, absolutely. You'll never be,
I'll never be Ed.
You'll never be Ed. But look, you've also interviewed some awesome people. So like Gregor, like Bulsiewicz. Have you learnt things from conversations with them, or even Emma Hurst, anyone that you've maybe compiled that information in your noggin and just taken that into the field and in the way you talk to people?
I've learned so much from those people. The calmness that they bring to their activism, so many. I think that's something I'm absolutely trying to channel. The evidence-based approach of the doctors is just mind-blowing. They are truly amazing. I think when you're having a conversation, it maybe gives you a little bit of legitimacy to when someone's challenging, oh, but athletes, oh, but doctors, oh, but whatever it is. When you've spoken to multiple individuals who are leading their field in that aspect that's being challenged, You can share that with the person you're chatting to, whether it's a family member or on the street or a client. It's got to give, a little bit of like credence to what you're saying, because you've spent an hour with a person who's at the top of their field, whether it's an athlete or a doctor or a politician, whoever it may be. It's got to count for something, I hope.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, a lot of them, you have talked to people at the top of your field, and the platform you're using to talk to people is the Healthification podcast. And I want to jump straight into that. Obviously, when you're looking at the word healthification, we've got the word health in there, and that's such a big topic for a lot of people. And as we all know, it's very subjective. So I wanted to know from the healthification girl herself, what does healthy mean to you?
Awesome. I love that. It's evolved over the years. From a younger point of view, when I first, got into fitness as a 19-year-old and in my early 20s, it was always about my body and how my body looked. It was vanity. That's completely what it was. And even my first decade or so in fitness as a personal trainer, again, it was very individually focused and was all about looking, the way that people want to look. It was very narrow-minded and narrow-focused. Since I've started the podcast, since I've become vegan, health to me is much broader than me and my own personal health. Obviously, my own personal health is broader in that it's not just about the way I look, it's about the way I feel, having enough energy to power through everything, work and play and everything else. It's also living a life aligned with my values and beliefs. But beyond that, so much more importantly, health is about not just me, it's about my community, it's about the world and it being sustainable. And it's also about all the individuals, all the species that we share this world with. It's so much broader.
Oh, it's a mammoth of a thing to look at. And the best and the worst part of that is that it is so broad. So when someone comes to you or, has a conversation, whether it's in, your fitness environment or it's out on the street or a friend or family member, and they said, okay, I want to be healthy. And, beyond eating more plants, which we can just say off the bat, we 100% support, what kind of things are you telling people to think about or include in their day, week, month, or year?
So first, like you kind of just did with me, I need to get a definition of what healthy, that's so broad, exactly what it means to them and what it looks like and why they're looking to achieve that. I'm a huge fan of defining both your goal, but also your values and also your beliefs and aligning those three things so that achieving your goal, whatever sort of health goal it is in alignment with your values and beliefs. So you kind of draw a little connection so that they're congruent, so that all the actions you need to take to achieve your health goal, they're aligned with the values, which are those states that you naturally seek out. For me, it's freedom, integrity, passion. There's no right or wrong. You kind of can't pick the ones that you think sound best, but you can look at your life and you can analyze values and you can think, hey, what are the states that I naturally seek out? And then also your beliefs, what you believe about yourself as a person. So to give a little example, if someone saw healthy as eating whole food, plant-based, and that was their goal, and then also their number one value had to do with family and love and connection, and they saw the big, hearty, meaty meals as a way that they provided love and connection and generosity to their family, there's a mad conflict there. It's going to be really hard for them to take those healthy, whole food-based options every single day when they also believe that they show love by sharing that flesh with their family.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting how you've got this end goal and you kind of almost, in the way you explain it, you work backwards, which is the way that you're seeing goals. Like you have this opportunity and you go one step at a time. In terms of, we'll go the fitness route first, given that that's your background. I don't know whether to say, I don't know what rough fitness level an Aussie or American or someone from Europe is at. Are most people in your experience couch potatoes? Or can someone go for a walk, lift a few weights, use a few machines, Like, what kind of defining goal is like specific enough for that person to have a grasp on it, have something to look forward to, but then work backwards from? Like, what is something like a minimum standard of a specificity you would recommend someone look into?
God, it's really hard, isn't it? Because I live in a super privileged area, and my clients, gratefully, most of them have been with me for over a decade. Many of them have been with me 15 years, which is how long I've been a personal trainer. So
Wow.
we're pretty much in a maintenance phase or with small goals for a lot of them. But most people, I would say, if they're not already in the gym habit, most people are incredibly sedentary and lazy, I would say. And I was probably there myself as well. I think a lot of us, we have trouble admitting our lack of discipline. I've admitted that I'm an undisciplined person, so I've set up my day and my week and my month and my life to kind of outsmart my lack of discipline. So I've kind of learned that, I won't do exercise unless I do it at this time. Like I need to have a training plan before the week starts, or else it's just not going to happen. I'll negotiate with myself every single day, unless I know that, I do this type of weights on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, and then I walk to work these days. I do a long walk this way. And my clients are like that as well. They kind of really need something non-negotiable, locked and loaded. That's where a personal trainer can be really handy, because obviously initially you're there showing them how to do the exercises safely and effectively and programming it. And most of them could get that pretty quickly and they could do it on their own, but they're not going to without that commitment. And also, a lot of them are super successful in their chosen form of work. They're super busy. They're excelling in every area of their life apart from maybe their health. And they actually want to outsource this component to someone else to take care of it. And I completely understand that. If there are other things that I could outsource, some things I do, but I would outsource so many things to another professional if I could. It just makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I love the whole kind of getting the non-negotiables done. Like, this week I can do whatever, but if I don't get my 5 days of working out or my 3 45-minute sessions or whatever it is, that's just no good for me. And now, obviously, when we have these goals, we're working towards something, whether that's fitness or, mentally, you have to have some sort of a calloused mind that is strong and confident and all these things to encompass health. I'm going to ask you a question that I think you'll find quite difficult to answer, but I'd love to know your perspective. How do you know when you are the best version of yourself when it comes to health?
So I think first off, it's not how I look. First off, it's living my life aligned with my values and beliefs. Like, that is absolutely key to me. And to do that, keystone habits come into play. They're like your most important habits that you build all the other impactful habits around. But I would even say beyond that, so far as myself, what is a constant struggle is negotiating that fine line. I don't really believe in balance, but negotiating that fine line between being ultra focused on my vision, which is to create a fit, strong, happy, healthy vegan world. So being really focused and effective with that, but also having gratitude and being present every single moment as well. I can get caught up, as I'm sure you can, in the strive, in the push, in the goal. And when I'm at my most healthy, I'm also making time guilt-free and just appreciating the moment as well. And that is a constant struggle for me.
Yeah, it's a constant struggle for, unfortunately, a lot of us. But I want to touch on what you just mentioned. You don't believe in balance. What does that mean?
I just think you're not going to have perfect balance on any given day or week or whatever it may be. I'm also believe, and I think you're kind of setting yourself up to fail and for pain and misery if you strive too much for that. I more so think there are seasons. So, this might be the season of getting extra podcasts done in 1 week, and next week might be the season of getting way more PT than you'd prefer to get done in 1 week. It's never going to be all perfectly balanced. Having said that, I hinted at keystone habits before, and I think they're that little framework to kind of lay the foundation for your ideal week and in doing so, your ideal health. They're those kind of big rocks that you might schedule into your week, again, non-negotiably. So there might be food prep, exercise, meditation, enough sleep, daily gratitudes and reference points for success. Whatever they are for you, they're probably my top 5. So they're in my week. They're non-negotiable. Nothing happens to them. But then stuff happens. You get this, right? People reschedule your podcast, or like clients COVID and you have 0 clients, and then clients come back and you work much longer hours than you would prefer to. So there's never perfect balance in every week, but you lock and load a few non-negotiables so that it all doesn't go to crapola.
Yeah, I think especially now, given the age that we're in, I think balance is important, but where I think people take it to a level that might be really anxiety driven and might cross the line is the fact that their balance might be weekly. So for me, it's like, if I don't run for this week, if I don't do 30 Ks this week, that week is a failure. But instead, taking that weekly approach and adding a huge lens to that, and then looking yearly even or monthly, where it's going to be much easier to create that balance. Because like you said, if 1 week or 1 month you just, you have to bang out podcast interviews because you're a bit behind, or maybe you've got a lot of interviews scheduled because you just want to get in the zone, and then next month, all right, I'm going to do more PT because that's my zone and that's how you work more efficiently. I think to your credit and what you're talking about is just widening that lens will just get rid of all the stress you have, which is can be quite abundant.
Totally. And also to your point, I think it is necessary to have a large degree of honesty with yourself. So, if I'm saying, I've had a big week, my body doesn't need exercise today, you've got to be really honest with yourself and admit, are you just being lazy, or would it really be bad to do exercise because your body's just been pushed to the limit? And the question I usually ask myself, before any activity like that is, how am I going to feel after it? And it's pretty easy. Generally after a workout, you're going to feel better. But if you're kind of like, my body's on the brink, it just needs an extra hour's sleep, well, then you actually know that beforehand as well. And you make the decision guilt-free to skip that session because you're being honest with yourself.
Yeah, and the worst part about, being honest with yourself is there's no clear guideline you or I or anyone could give about how to find out if you're treading across a line, because your body is so unique, and it might be an excuse, or it might be some level or form of intuition in your body. Like anecdotally, I know this morning I didn't feel like working out. I'll probably still work out today, but it's more a mental thing, like, gyms are closed, so I have to, conduct a home workout, which is, there's no motivation because you don't strut yourself to the gym. And that's a mental strain, I think. And that's something, like you said before, when you do that workout, you're going to feel amazing. Let's be honest. I'm still sitting here like, Tom, why'd you say that? You're admitting to yourself that you'll feel amazing after that workout. Now you got to do that workout. But on the other side, when I was training for a marathon, when I am training for a marathon, it's like, you got to get this 10K run done, or whatever the K is, in this week or this day. And, I remember when I was feeling genuinely sick after a meal, I went out to run the 10 or 15K, and, I'm strutting along wanting to hurl. And that's probably the line in the sand where it's like, no, that wasn't you being lazy. That was your body saying don't go.
Yeah.
And learning that is a really difficult and painful lesson.
Do you know, it's so true. And I relate to the whole home workout not being nearly as fun as strutting to the gym. Home workout are my worlds right now as well. And it does take a bit more discipline. I would also finally say that aligning it with your personal identity beliefs, and they're everything you believe to be true about you. So I have a belief that I'm a fit, healthy person who prioritizes my exercise. I'm kind of letting myself down when I then flag my exercise just because it's a little less fun. So I think that's a key one to look into as well for anyone who's not sure how they feel about what their beliefs are about exercise. Just ask yourself what comes up when you say I am in relation to exercise. Because if you, and I've had many clients like this, if their I am is I am a person who would prefer to sit on the couch and eat ice cream, it's really hard for you to get your butt to the gym. And you can change that belief. Like it's not easy, but you can change that belief. And then taking those actions will become, again, not always easy, but definitely easier.
I totally agree. Have you read or heard of Atomic Habits by James Clear?
How funny.
Yeah.
When you were talking before, I've interviewed him. He is amazing, and one of the rare non-vegans that I've interviewed, but he is just amazing. And when you were talking before, I thought of his example, never skip twice, because that is like, it gives you that little bit of leeway. You're not going to break yourself because you're like hell bent on keeping the consistency, ticking that box, but you're not going to do it a second day.
Yeah, I love the thing I was thinking about is when you're talking about the identification, and he talks about, especially when it comes to addiction, and if he specifically brings up smoking, because smoking is something that's notoriously and fair enough hard to give up. And he talks about this example where someone offers you a cigarette, and instead of saying no thanks, what you have to start telling yourself is, no, I'm not a smoker. And then you associate your identity with the habit that you want to manifest or really bring into fruition.
100%. And all of these sorts of habits, it's a little bit more groundwork up front, but it's laying the foundation for down the track. It is actually just going to happen automatically. But you do have to kind of manufacture those beliefs and say that to yourself. I'm not a person who smokes, whatever it may be. You do have to put in that work initially.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, on the topic of health as well, with food and meals, do you generally try to stick to like a whole foods plant-based diet?
Yeah, primarily. However, I have the odd, like I have processed food that I might buy from the supermarket. So vegan burgers and what else do I have? I have kind of a couple of things a week, but I track them. I am very much a fan of meal prepping. I like to start the week feeling in control that I've made a lot of my meals. And so far as the whole food plant-based, it's actually what I prefer most of the time. Like if I go home to Noosa where my mum and dad live and my plant-based mum has
some
made
amazing
a whole batch.
food at Noosa, by the way. I saw your photos.
Amazing food. And most of it's probably from my mum. So she's made amazing like mushroom and bean burgers. They are 100 times better than the mushroom and beetroot burgers I buy from the supermarket. But I'm just not going to go to the effort that she goes to make them. So that's the only reason when I'm not whole food plant-based, really. It's just because there's only so much cooking I'm going to do.
Yeah, it comes to this whole, the concept of our convenience foods have, I feel like, I don't know, I'm only speaking anecdotally, but I feel like they're really going in the right direction. Like there's going to be some meals that are for like the junk vegans, and that's fine, whatever needs to float their boat, but the Impossible Burgers, the Beyond Burgers. But then it almost looks like there's a lot of actually pretty good, healthier options, like in the Coles and the Woolies home brand, the little kofta things, and there's a lot of wholemeal patties and stuff coming out that are offering the convenience without the added sodium and fat content, which I'm so stoked to see.
I couldn't agree more. And I think the way that I utilize those products is I'll make them part of a meal. So I'm going to have like those burgers with a huge salad of like 12 different veggies that I make at home. So it's not like I'm having burgers and like potato puffs and like all processed stuff. I'm having them as a component of the meal, and I'm adding all that fresh whole food plant-based as well.
Did you say 12 vegetables?
Oh, at least. In some salads, I'll have like 20.
Dr. Bulsiewicz would be so proud of you.
He'd be so proud of me. Yep, definitely.
Did you know about this? I actually didn't know about this whole concept of 30 or 40 plants, different plants a week, before having heard him and Simon Hill talk about it. How did you come across the power of like eating the rainbow?
I guess I don't know where diversity first came for that. I think I remember hearing it. I remember hearing Simon post about it first, and I was like, really? Like, that's so easy. I do that in a day. So for me, I was like, set the bar a little bit higher.
So
It was
lucky.
really easy.
Yeah.
I was already doing it. And I think maybe that came from when I first went vegan. I was in a gym full of guys, and one of them made the comment, ugh, goodbye lean muscle mass. And I got so much bad feedback from already being the veggie, and then I was going vegan. And it was like they were just expecting me to fail. So I got super strategic so far as looking at all the micronutrients that I had to be aware of. And I just initially, that first year or two, I really did structure my meals around just almost perfect and so much diversity and just ticking all the right boxes. And of course, I've relaxed a little bit now, but I'm still, I've got the bases covered.
On the topic of like gym people and kind of like the bro science of the world, it actually shocks me how little their diversity is. Like, I remember when I was, 18, 17, 16, prior to being veggie or vegan, it's like what they expect you to eat is oats with some sort of protein powder and water and milk, and then lunch is some sort of chicken and broccoli and rice, and then dinner is some sort of chicken, broccoli and rice. And it's like, I'm thinking how different the perspective is now of like this whole, everyone is kind of seeing the benefit of the diversity of plants, but like, what is the effect on their gut of like just repeating these almost mono meals, like maybe 2 to 3 to 4 ingredients? Like, thank goodness their chicken has got spices that might help them out in terms of diversity. But it's like, how, like, they must have some really bad leaky gut issues. Like, I haven't looked at like bodybuilding populations and what the issues are, if any at all. I'm just assuming based on what we know and what we've learned from like Simon Hill, Bulsiewicz, Alan Desmond, and all these people, like how they always talk about how bad not having diversity is.
It's got to be horrific, right? And equally, they think we're the ones with a restrictive diet because we're eliminating all the flesh and secretions, But like every vegan says, it's definitely been my experience that I have tried so many new foods and my diet is so much more diverse than certainly what it was as a meat eater and definitely what it was as a vegetarian as well. I'm trying so many different foods.
Yeah, and I think it's easier now than ever, thank God. Especially because if you look at the vegan populations, it's generally a bit younger. You're moving out of home maybe for the first time, you're doing the meal prep, and so you get to learn all these different recipes and have what like psychologically taken away from you. So you then have to Google new recipes, and I'm just speaking what I think could happen, and all the new recipes now online are just diversity, diversity, diversity. Especially when it comes to like, the popular recipe places like a Vegan Easy, Forks Over Knives. Like, these have such diversity in plants. What's like a meal that you love that you think has a lot of diversity that you just love cooking up?
God, so many. My go-to lunch, because you freaked out at the 12 veggies. My go-to lunch
I didn't. I was just impressed. All
right, good. Good. My go-to lunch has got to be like a 20 plus veggie salad. And basically it's just a base of raw salad veggies. So there's going to be like 12 or so of them. And then I'll bake whatever veggies are looking good. Maybe some cauliflower, mushroom, onion, pumpkin, whatever it may be. I batch cook dairy-free or make dairy-free pesto on the weekend. So I stir that through the roast veggies and I dump that on the salad veggies, which also have avocado and balsamic. And then I batch cook also or make like a protein pimped hummus on the weekend as well. And I tip that over it all. So, there's easily 20 plus veggies in that meal. The hummus has got chickpeas and hemp seeds in it. And the pesto's got all different nuts and nutritional yeast in it. So that's just like a really fresh and huge. I like big, like it's a really big bowl and different textures and different elements. And yeah, that's awesome.
And what I love about those kind of bowls is they're not expensive. Like they're so cheap and they're so filling. Like my partner makes this amazing, very similar ingredients. She makes her own falafels. I reckon it has about 22 veggies and fruits and plants.
Amazing.
And that's I think when it comes to health, and I think you'll kind of side with me on this, gamifying things like that is actually where I think Bulsiewicz and Simon Hill and all these guys went really well. Like health is so convoluted and difficult. And when you gamify things and you're just like, oh, tick box, 1 veggie, 2, 3, and then you keep going. And then it's also easy to track it. Like because health is so subjective and you can't pinpoint exactly what it is. But if we look at, okay, nutritionally, just get 30 plants, 40 plants. Oh, I could just tick that off as the week goes. And I think psychologically that makes it so much easier.
I guess you're right. They're making it fun rather than like a constant struggle street and a hardship. You know, the old food diary that us personal trainers used to make our clients fill in. They're really valuable. We need to know where you're at and you need to know because often the client is lying to themselves as well as their friendly trainer. But they're not fun. They feel really restrictive. People don't want to do them. But if you can make it more fun, then people are more likely to do it and stick with it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we were talking about the chicken and broccoli to now diversity in plants. Is there anything else that you used to think was really good or like healthy to a certain degree and now you're just like, what the heck did I think?
I made all the mistakes, hey. When in my early 20s, when I was first gym obsessed, I was all about all the refined carbs plus lots of whey-based protein shakes. So 3 whey-based protein shakes a day, and then I lived on cereal and bread. I was terrified of fat. No fat, not an avocado or nut in sight, but all the refined carbs. I'd my breakup food, if I broke up with someone in my early 20s, was like a whole bunch of crunchy nut cornflakes. Not with milk, just out of the box. And I was lean because I was in my 20s and I was doing 2 hours a day at the gym. Yeah. Then my next one, when I got into personal training initially 15 or 16 years ago, it was all about the low carb, high protein. And I was vegetarian at that point in time. So I was obsessed with low carb, high protein vegetarian.
You're just smashing avocado and nuts, really.
Do you know? No, because I wanted the protein, right? Like it was all about the protein. So I was smashing, and I was veggie, so I was smashing the egg whites. I got up to 20 egg whites a day.
Oh my God.
So I feel so bad about that. I was terrified of carbs. At least I gave up the refined carbs. It broke that habit. And then I probably went through a period of counting calories rather than nutrients. And now I'm just all about the nutrients. I really don't care so much about the carbs, proteins, fats. I want to make sure there's some protein there just because I know it's satisfying. And I feel it if there's not fat there. If I go through a meal without fat, it's really satisfying as well. And I notice it. But it's more like the nutrients and the diversity and the color that I'm looking for now. And obviously the taste.
I mean, the color's really easy to see on the bowl. But how are you counting your nutrients at the moment?
Do you know, it's more so, it's just that I really did my time when I first became vegan 5.5 years ago. And so I kind of built my meals around a lot of the things that you have to look out for, the iron and the calcium and the zinc and that sort of thing. And so a lot of those meals, they're fairly similar to what they were then. So I kind of know I've got the bases covered. Sometimes I actually look back at my old content if I need a bit of a reminder. I'm like, hey, what was I saying in my Easy Vegan Iron post or my Easy Vegan Calcium post? I will actually look back at that. But if you encounter a new food, I'm kind of fascinated when I try a new food. I'm like, oh, what's this good for? And I'll Google it and I'll find out like what's it got in it. And like, that's cool. Just gradually you build up your awareness of these new foods that you're trying and what they've got to offer.
Are you, like, on the topic of nutrients, are you kind of consciously trying to consume more iron given not only the vegan status but the female status?
I don't have too much of a problem with that. I consume quite a lot. I seem to like the high iron foods, a lot of iron foods. And also when I do have that processed stuff, a lot of it's been fortified.
Yes.
Also, I do make an effort to get my bloods done every couple of years. And then also I'm just a little bit lucky in that I've got hemochromatosis in the family, which it helps you in that regard to the best of my knowledge. I think that's how it was explained to me. But in terms of red blood cells and stuff, we've kind of got an abundance in my family. So being a female, I take care of that naturally. And, I probably bring it down a little bit, maybe being a vegan as well. But it hasn't been an issue for me, iron.
Well, you're one of the lucky few. Well, I guess a lot of people don't struggle. I don't really know, like, I don't speak to a lot of female vegans and how they kind of adopted the iron status. I know in most populations it's pretty good, but every study always concludes be wary of iron, regardless of if their iron was sufficient or not. They'll always put that into conclusion, which I think is fair enough. And I think that's something that is put in like every female population study. There's no female population that's just like, oh, there's too much iron. What's going on here?
Do you know, I will say as well, though, like, obviously I've been super diligent and I think that is important, but I do get a little bit annoyed at all the vegans need to look out for this when you compare the way that so many of us eat to the standard American style. Like, come on, like the people living on Maccas and cornflakes, they probably need to look out for a few nutrients as well, right?
Oh, they need to look out for the heart disease and the cholesterol and the saturated fats. Their studies, there's so many of them, they just get less clickable titles. That's the only difference. When I'm diving into it and I'm reading the literature, I'm sitting there for hours and I'm like, there's really not too much, like at all, when it comes to vegans need to be wary of iron. And there's certain population databases and stratas that they look at, but when it looks at the totality of the science and the data, it's fascinating how much is out there that is pro plant-based that doesn't get to any headline. And I don't know whether that's just not clickable. Like, I don't know whether people just want to, be comforted in the fact that their decisions in what they currently eat are good for them. It's that whole fat is back, butter is back kind of situation where you want to read the studies that say it's good. Like, I have a phenomenal example. This, Facebook articles, how they're just kind of BS a lot of the time. There was this one article that I got tagged in and I'm just like, no freaking way. And it said, gin drinkers have lower chance of cardiovascular disease. This was the title. I kid you not, Kate. Let me explain this. This was the title. And when looking at it, I'm like, all right, let's see what they actually found. Like, I want to really know. And I looked into them and blah, blah, University of Estonia. I think it was University of Estonia. And I'm like,
yeah,
I'll Google it. I'm like, what the hell? I can't find a University of Estonia. It just doesn't exist. I'm like, what's going on? And I do some more digging around the good old World Wide Web. And I'm like, where does this story come from? And I start Googling. I go to PubMed and I Google the doctor's name. I Google the name of the study and I've got it in the search bar. Nothing's coming up. And then I find the very first mention of this study. And it was by Yahoo Finance. And at the very bottom of that whole article, they said, April Fools.
Oh no! I was going to say like a gym company, like paid for the study.
No,
That's insane.
no,
That's even
they said
worse.
April Fools, and that's fine. That's a pretty funny joke. Not a problem with that. I don't have a problem with Yahoo doing that. It's in their discretion. April Fools, April Fools. Hey, it's a worldwide phenomenon. Take it. The problem is journalists then
Ugh.
take that, copy, paste, analogize, use a thesaurus, whatever they want to do. I don't know how they expanded any more information because the study wasn't real. And they just left out the last part saying April Fools. And I'm thinking there's two problems here. One, people are gullible. So
Mm.
they're going to see that and they're going to be like, oh, this is great. Let's bring out the gin. I'm healthy. I'm in vitality. Got my gin and tonic. I'm good. And then the second problem is we incentivize journalists and news media companies with clickbait. And it's like they get paid, to do okay, how long do you reckon it will take to do some research on what is every single nutrient that you need your body to take? How long do you reckon that will take?
Look, you could just Google someone that like had done it for you and take their advice, right?
And how long would they study for?
I guess a while. I guess a while.
while, right? And so when we're looking at that, it's like, then these journalists need to pump out 10 stories a day.
Oh, for
They're not
sure.
gonna
They're not
do
doing their due
research.
diligence. 100%.
And
Also, people believe what they want to believe, right? People want
Bang
to
on.
believe that their bad habits are good for them. I love the studies that tell me that red wine is good for me. Like people are going to click on that and people are going to want to believe that, and that's our nature. But you're right. The journalists shouldn't be taking advantage of that. There's like zero ethics in that.
Oh, absolutely. And I don't want to say for 1 second I'm blaming the journalists. Like that's how they keep their job. Like I can't imagine how hard it is to keep a job being a journalist these days when there's so much out there. There's at this stage there's technologies that robots can write papers.
Yeah.
Like your job's on the line, and if you don't do your research properly and you don't publish 10 papers a day, it's like you've lost your job. So I understand where you're coming from. So red wine and stuff is good for you.
It's good for my peace of mind anyway.
It's good for your
It's
peace of
enjoyable.
Have you read Fiber Fueled?
Oh, yes, of course. I read it before I interviewed Will, and I loved it. I read it actually this time last year when I was in the COVID lockdown in Noosa with my mum and dad for 12 weeks, and it's a really easy to read book. I thought it might have been, like, I know it's important, but I'm like, gut health, how can anyone get fascinated by that? I see how he's fascinated by that. It is fascinating, and the book was great.
What was this is not a book club or anything, but what was your biggest takeaway or some of your biggest learnings?
I don't know if I can remember a biggest takeaway right now, but I know Mum and I got mad on the broccoli sprouts, on doing sprouts while we were up there in Noosa. Whereas now, this is so typical. This is just typical us. Mum's still doing them. They're amazing. I come back to Sydney and I can buy them at Harris Farm, so I do. Like, that's more my approach, but still having them.
Sprouts are actually so cool. Like Doug Evans and that whole movement that he's brought about with sprouts is just something that's really awesome. Speaking of health and, of course, touching back to the activism and all the stuff you do there, when you're talking to people, whether it's friends or family or people on your podcast, and you've got lots of amazing tips there, like what do you speak about that is something you, I guess, recommend for people looking to start out on a plant-based diet? Like, do you recommend to watch out for certain nutrients or certain studies to read or documentaries to watch or anything like that?
Do you know, maybe I'm going to sound a little bit like I'm on repeat, but my go-to is to really connect with their why. I mean, a lot of people want to dabble with plant-based because they feel like it's good for their health, which it is, obviously. We're in agreement on that. But they don't really dig deep enough and connect with that emotional fuel enough. And as I've said, connect it with their values and their beliefs. And so at the first instant of it getting a little bit struggle street, whether they're at a board meeting or they're at dinner at a friend's house or even they're cooking dinner at their own house and they're worried about being a bit of a hassle to someone else, or how are they going to be judged? They haven't connected huge emotional intensity so far as why they want to adopt a plant-based lifestyle. And you can create that intensity around anything. Obviously, it's incredibly easy so far as the ethics and the animals, but the environment, your health. My dear mum, who was a nurse for 30 years, one of the huge things that got her when she eventually watched What the Health with me was seeing the conditions that the people of lower socioeconomic standing were having to deal with when they lived near huge, pig farms, and the lakes of waste that was then being sprayed out onto the surrounding communities. And people had asthma and they couldn't go outside their houses and they could never sell their houses. And my mum really connected with that on a huge emotional way, and the way that I connect with the animals. And the problem is people just jump in and they want to do the actions. And for sure, I've got all the tips about, prioritize whole foods and all that sort of jazz. But I think people need to put a little bit of time into the groundwork that's going to support them when it does get tough. Because it gets tough, not because the food isn't delicious or available or anything like that, but it gets tough being surrounded by non-vegans. I think most of us agree that's the toughest, maybe the only tough part of being vegan, is that we're not living in a vegan world and the suffering still continues, and there are non-vegans all around us. So we really do need to connect to exactly why we're doing it.
Yeah, I think that's hugely important. Like you said, it is an incredibly hard thing to not be surrounded by other people that also share your morals and ethical compass. And sometimes it doesn't have to be physical people. Like at the very beginning, you said you love going to these activism events to spend time with other vegans, and I think that's fantastic. And that's, I've made some amazing friends doing things like that. But also, I think to your merit and to your point, you, in this wonderful age of technology, you can also spend time with anyone you want. If you want to listen, if you want a vegan athlete friend, go listen to a Rich Roll podcast. If you
so true,
you have access to almost anyone. And if I right now went and did, because you've got over 700 episodes, I could really spend a few months daily listening to your podcast.
You could overdose on me. Yeah,
I could properly OD. But I would feel like even if I had not met you, you'd be my best friend. I hear you speaking like, oh, I want to eat that candy bar. And if that's not in alignment with you, because it's the whole thing, like you're the average of 5, if that's not in alignment with you as my vegan friend, even though we haven't met, it's like your voice and lessons has kind of told me to not do that. And it's the same. It just makes things easier. I think I'm lazy in a way that I like to make everything easy.
Do you know it's so true? In the same way that we can choose what fuel we let into our body, we can choose what fuel we let into our mind. And, and we should be super diligent with choosing the fuel that we let in.
Yeah, absolutely. The fuel, it's like, the thing I heard most when I went vegan, it's like my body is a garden, not a graveyard, that whole thing.
So true.
So true. Coming to the end, we've touched on so much, but I wanted to, give you the platform. Obviously, I'll leave all the links to find you in the show notes if you want to touch on any more, what the best place is to connect with you, and also leave us with some words of Kate wisdom. The platform is all yours.
Oh, thank you, Tom. That's lovely. Well, you've already shouted out the Healthification podcast. That is my heart. It's absolutely a passion project. As you said, 700 plus episodes. And, I get to chat with inspiring activists and athletes and authors and doctors, and it's the highlight of my week. So it is Healthification wherever you listen to podcasts. And there's a really diverse mix. I actually started it off 5 days a week. I was a mad woman. I did that for a full year, and it was all health and fitness. So I didn't start interviews until maybe 2 or 3 years ago. So there's a good mix of hardcore animal rights, not so uplifting, but very important. And then just, super implementable, actionable info where I chat with some of my heroes. So that's my big shout out. Thank you. Some Kate advice, far out. Do you know, I would more so maybe share what I am really excited about right now and what I want to see more of. And Tom, you're good at this. I want to see more of vegans supporting vegans. I get the opportunity to chat to so many amazing vegans all around the world, and it breaks my heart when vegans tear each other down. We've got all the non-vegans to do that. So I'm really excited when I see vegans supporting other vegans, and probably shout out to vegan FTA, vegan for the animals, in
Jackie
in
and Gareth, get it?
Jackie and Gareth are damn good at doing that. Whenever I look to share some of their content, it's already content that's been shared by someone, like they're sharing someone else's content. Like they're just amazing at it. So so that's my call to action. Vegans, go support other vegans. Like, just check yourself if you're gonna like dismiss or hate on someone, and realize their intentions probably really genuine. I just released an episode with Tash Peterson, Vegan Booty, and God, that lady gets some hate. And she,
I can imagine.
Oh, you can't read it. I can't read it. In prepping for the show, I really couldn't read it. And yet I was getting all excited in the interview, like on her behalf, like in terms of like pissed off. And she's so calm and beautiful and compassionate. She's amazing. So vegans support vegans.
Yeah, I totally agree with all that. I couldn't imagine what her comments look like on TikTok or on Instagram.
Repulsive.
But, I watched the little preview you had on Instagram. She speaks pretty eloquently and calmly, and she is just very well versed. And I didn't picture that at all, because having seen some videos of her on TikTok, she's out there yelling, she's got the megaphone, like she must have, like, she's in the zone kind of thing.
I'm like, how much meditation do you do? But she is actually a real introvert. Everything that she puts on is for the animals. It's not her natural her. She's like, was the shy girl in school. So everything you see online, she's just doing it because it's so important to her. And for her, it's her most effective form of activism. So again, back to us choosing whatever's most effective for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And, of course, you've got the second podcast, which is Plant Positive with Kate Galli as well. I actually really like this one. I'm just going to give a special shout out to it. I probably smashed like 5 or 10 episodes in one gym session. They're like bite-sized pieces and there's different categories and topics. And I think that's a really nice one, because I love the long form content, like the hour plus. But if you're, I want to hit the treadmill for 20 minutes, it's actually a really good little piece of nuggets that you offer. And you've got quite a meditative voice as well. So
thank you so much. I was so excited to launch Plant Positive. Like, definitely I loved the idea. And to be honest, it didn't get the downloads, and it was there to drive downloads to Healthification. And I think I ended it at season 1. I could definitely come back for a season 2.
Do it.
But I think it might be better if I've got like a partner. Like, I think 2 people playing off each other. My mum said, it's not positive enough, Katie. You need to be more uplifting. I'm like, how can I do that on my own? But anyway, thank you, Tom. We'll see.
You can contact Kate if you want to join the application.
Partner with me.
I always love to finish my podcast on a high note, and a lot of that comes from thanking the guest, not only for, having spent your time here with us and dropping your wisdom and supplying us with an amazing conversation. And there's lots of amazing nuggets that you left, which is awesome. And I'm super grateful for that. But I obviously do have to say thank you on behalf of the voiceless, the animals. A lot of what we talked about was the activism, and, you do amazing work both on the field and online, which I couldn't imagine how many animals didn't end up on a plate because of the work that you do. So I really appreciate that on the animals' behalf, but also because of that and correlated to that, you've helped save so much methane and carbon dioxide from entering the atmosphere, and that in turn helps us with climate change and all the amazing work you do with the podcast and sharing knowledge. And I know from experience, it's strenuous work and it's hard and it requires a lot of hours, and a lot of the time it's from the love of your heart. So I appreciate all the work you do. It definitely does not go unnoticed, and I thank you on behalf of myself and of the Plant Paradigm community for coming on and sharing this conversation, and I can't wait to get to know you further.
Thank you, Tom. What a lovely way to finish the podcast. That was absolutely fantastic. I had so much fun. So huge thanks to you for everything that you do. And it's been an absolute joy.
Hi there. Welcome to the end of the episode. Thank you for listening the whole way through. I really appreciate it. It's been over an hour and you've lended me your ears this whole time. So I sincerely thank you, and I hope that you got a lot of value out of it. I definitely did, and learned heaps. The conversation was wide-spanning, and it's not every day I actually talk to an activist that's out there on the street. So I hope that you took away some different ways to maybe talk to people and diffuse the situation, which can be quite frightening, especially like in Kate's situation when someone really comes up to you like a raging bull, and having to have the confidence and the congruency to just stand your ground and really come at it in a place of compassion and sincerity. That's really impressive, and a talent and a skill that all of us can develop. Thank you once again to Kate, who came on to talk about her experiences and shared her wisdom with all of us. Of course, you can follow her on Instagram, and of course, Healthification podcast is everywhere you find your podcast. So if you're ever in need for a new one, definitely check that out. I can attest that there's some great episodes in there, and let's be honest, she actually does have a pretty soothing voice. Thank you, Kate, and thank you all for listening once again. Of course, leave a review if you do so feel inclined. And for those visually inclined, remember we are on the YouTubes, and snippets of this show get sent to Instagram at plant.paradigm, where I post a lot of different things, different ways to hack your life, be better with plastic waste, be healthier, different nutrition guides, different climate guides, and ways and resources that you can bring to the table when you talk to your friends and family. And maybe if you are doing street activism, I would say that some of them are actually really good resources and stats and figures to bring to the table. I'm there to simplify the facts and bring the long, convoluted scientific studies that a lot of us, including me sometimes, don't know how to read. So I want to make it as simple as possible. But that is all from me today. Eat plants, stay happy, peace.